Okay, here we go. So I know it's a little early. We're not quite in trade season at the moment, but I like trades. You like trades. We all like trades. So why not just get a head start and talk about some early trade candidates? The few guys I'm going to talk about first are some players that I'm not quite sure on at the moment. Let's start with the top dog, Shohei Ohtani. We all know what Shohei Ohtani can do. He can hit, he can pitch. He is absolutely amazing, doing really well with the bat so far, hitting 275, a 347 on base, 523 slugging, 12 homers. He's not pitching as well as he was doing last year, but he's still having a fine season on the mound. Shohei Ohtani is absolutely amazing. The one thing that is holding back a Shohei Ohtani trade is whether or not the Angels will be in contention. 28-24 as of right now, 5.5 games back in the division, but only 2 games back in the wild card as of right now. But if they fade getting closer to the trade deadline, let's say they're 5, 6, 7 games out, I would imagine that the Angels would look into a trade for him. You know, this guy wants to play for a winner, and if the Angels continue to be lackluster when it comes to being in contention, he's not going to re-sign with the Angels. So you might as well just trade the guy. He will definitely bring some very good value back to you. As of right now, according to baseballtradevalues.com, he has a $55.5 million value for a half a season. I mean, that is pretty pricey, but teams would absolutely jump on the chance to trade for Ohtani. You know, what are some teams that could possibly make a trade for Shohei Ohtani? The one team that jumps right off the page to me are the Mets. The only thing that holds me back with the Mets is even though they are built to win right now, they're also trying to build up that farm system as well. So I wonder if they would want to part with the prospects, but they've had injuries with their pitching. They could use another bat. He just fits perfectly. The Dodgers are always connected with him. I don't know if the Angels would trade him to the Dodgers. You know, Artie Moreno doesn't really seem very fond of that idea. One dark horse team, I wonder if the Rays would maybe want to jump on it. How good of a season that they've been having this year. My goodness, so good this season, the Tampa Bay Rays. And, you know, it would really go against kind of what they've done with trades in the past. They have traded for guys, you know, Reynolds, but Ohtani, he would cost a lot of prospects. However, with the Rays, they have the prospects, and I think the Rays are really motivated to try and win a championship this year. Of course, they're motivated every year to win a championship, but I think now it's a little different because they are trying to get more fans. They are trying to get a new stadium. I think, you know, winning a championship this year would be really big for their organization moving forward. So maybe they pull the trigger and they send some prospects back to the Angels and they get a deal done. I wonder if the Rays could be a dark horse candidate. They have the prospects. They could get a deal done. But with Ohtani, again, it's going to come down to whether or not the Angels are in contention or not. So as of right now, not quite sure. And then we have a couple other pitchers like Shane Bieber and Dylan Cease, except the difference with these guys compared to Ohtani is they're under more control. Dylan Cease is not going to be a free agent until after the 2025 season, while Shane Bieber is going to be a free agent after the 2024 season. They will definitely cost a lot because of that control. Shane Bieber will cost around $50 million worth of value, while Dylan Cease, you're looking at around 56. Very similar to Shohei Ohtani, but again, with these guys, you're going to have them longer than you would with Ohtani, who I would imagine would test the free agent market instead of signing an extension with the team that he gets traded to. So with these guys, the one thing holding back Dylan Cease and Shane Bieber is simply the fact that they're in a very weak division. As of right now, the Twins lead the division at 27-25, but that is a very bad record for a division leading team. You got the Tigers, who are 2 games under 500, only 2 games back as of right now. The Guardians are 4 games back. The White Sox are only 6 games back, and the White Sox got off to that terrible start, but they've been better in the month of May, 14-10 in May as of right now. So these teams are not out of it by any means. So I don't know if the Guardians would want to give up on Shane Bieber. I don't know if the White Sox would want to give up on someone like Dylan Cease. And they have a lot of talent to where even if they do miss the playoffs this year, they could still retool for next year and hang on to the guy. But they are interesting candidates. You know, obviously teams would love to have either a Shane Bieber or a Dylan Cease. So, but again, because of the division that they're in, I'm not quite sure if these teams would give them up. If the Guardians or the White Sox were to trade these guys, I would imagine some of these teams would be interested. I already mentioned the Dodgers and the Rays with Shohei Ohtani. Maybe they would be more attracted to one of these guys because they are under more contract control. So maybe they would think it would be more worth it, giving up prospects. I would imagine they would probably be more inclined to have a guy that's under control. They're going to be giving up some good prospects. And then you got some other teams here like the Texas Rangers. Who knows what's going on with DeGrom's health, but the Rangers, they could be interested in maybe adding a guy like this, but they've also been rebuilding their farm system. So I don't know if they would want to break up that farm as of right now, since they have been working on trying to beef it back up. You got the team like the Baltimore Orioles. They've really put together a great farm system, but I don't know if they would want to jump the gun. They've really been taking that slow approach, that long road. So I don't know if they would want to maybe make a deal. And then you got a team like the St. Louis Cardinals, where they do have a pretty decent farm system, but would they want to give up prospects for a guy like a Shane Bieber or a Dylan Cease? Possibly. I could probably see the Cardinals more inclined to, especially with the time frame that they have, with the players that they have as of right now, like Arenado and Goldschmidt. Maybe they do want to go for it, so they would be willing to give up some prospects. Would they be able to get a deal done? Not quite sure about that, but I do think these teams would definitely be in the mix, in trade talks for these guys. And then you got a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez, an old friend of mine. He's having a great season. 10 starts, over 60 innings pitched so far, a 2.19 ERA, a 3.04 FIP, having a great season with the Tigers. Had just a really weird season last year, went MIA at one point. He was dealing with some injuries, but this year, wow, he's been great. But that's what really makes him so interesting, is he's having this really good season, but then you combine the fact that he can opt out after this year, which could, it could go both ways. That could maybe mean that the Tigers would be more inclined to possibly deal him. But then there's also the fact where, would teams really want to give up a whole lot for him, considering there is an opt-out, and it's probably looking likely he will use that opt-out clause because of the good season that he's having. So it's interesting, but then you also combine the fact, we just looked at the AL Central, they're 24-26 and only 2 games out right now. So would they be more inclined to hang on to him and, try and see if they can work something out with him to stay for the rest of the contract? Maybe they can rework some of the terms. Maybe they can offer him some more money and convince him to stay. Maybe try and work on building up the relationship a little bit more and see if he'll stay for the next few seasons instead of opting out. Again, there is a good chance that he will opt out because he's pitching extremely well. He's one of the best pitchers in the game right now. But I don't know if the Tigers would want to give him up right now. I think the Tigers would like to hang on to Eduardo Rodriguez. But, because of where they are in the standings, I'm not quite sure really what they do. If they fall out of it, if they're, 6, 7 out, 8 out by the time we get to the deadline, then yeah, I definitely think they would probably trade him. But if they're in this spot as of right now, 2 games out, in the middle of July, I think they could end up hanging on to him and they can, maybe make a run at trying to win the Central. And as for his value, as of right now, he is worth under $10 million. And the big thing is because of the opt-out. And then you combine the fact, with what was going on with him last year, that I think hurt his value, even if it was just like a little bit. But, Erod, he won't cost a lot just because of that opt-out clause. That is the big reason. But, with Erod, we're just going to have to wait and see. Okay, now let's get to some guys that I think could be some serious trade candidates. The first name that I'm coming up with is Jeimer Candelario. He's having himself a good season so far. He's been hot lately. 49 games overall, hitting .257, a .318 on base, .445 slugging, a 104 WRC+. Not great numbers overall, but he got off to a really slow start. Over the last 15 games, though, he's been hitting really well, hitting .375, a .470 on base, .679 slugging. He's got a couple of homers, 8 RBIs as well. He's walked 8 times compared to 11 strikeouts. He is doing very well right now. And I wonder if a team would maybe be interested in adding this bat. He would be a rental. He's a free agent after this year. And I would imagine the Nationals, unless maybe they want to sign him to an extension, I would imagine they would probably want to trade him. He's not going to cost a whole lot. $3.4 million worth of value as of right now. One team that does come to mind that they're hanging around in the playoff picture as of right now, we got the Miami Marlins at 500 as of right now. They're 1 game back in the wild card picture, their offense has not been good this year. If we go take a look at their production at third base, they are dead last overall. So I think Jeimer Candelario could be a pretty nice addition for the Miami Marlins, because Gene Segura, the guy they brought in the offseason, he's been one of the biggest busts in all of Major League Baseball this year. Who knows? Maybe they move Segura back to the bench and they give Jeimer Candelario a chance. I think this could be a pretty good fit for him. There are some other teams out there, maybe they could use another bat. You could put him in as a DH, but I think this is a guy to really pay attention to. Another name that I think could be interesting is Charlie Blackmon, lifelong Colorado Rocky, having himself a pretty good season. 46 games, hitting .286, a .372 on base, .452 slugging, 4 homers. The advanced numbers on StatCast are looking pretty decent as well. The exit velocity, not too high on it, but some of the expected numbers here are looking pretty good. The xWOBA, the x-batting average, x-slugging. He doesn't strike out a whole lot. He still walks a pretty good amount. He's not swinging and missing a lot. He's not chasing a lot. I think he could be a pretty decent veteran addition for another team. The one thing with Charlie Blackmon is he is making a bit of money, but if he continues to hit well, I think some teams could be intrigued with maybe taking on the rest of the contract, possibly. I mean, if we take a look here, he is a free agent after this year, so it's not like you're going to be having to pay him for future seasons. So I think it's possible that a team could, especially if they don't have to give up a whole lot of prospects, they would be willing to take on the money that he's going to be making for the rest of the year. One team that really jumps off the page to me are the Cleveland Guardians. This is a team that could really use some offense. And if we take a look at the lineup here, you got someone like a Gabriel Arias who's been playing out in right field lately. He's not doing too well this year. They could use another bat. I think Charlie Blackmon could be a pretty decent addition for the Guardians. Let's move on to a couple other outfielders, Cody Bellinger and Jock Peterson. I think these two guys could be very much available at the deadline, mainly just because of, where their team's going to be at the trade deadline. The Cubs, they got off to a great start, but now they're 6 games under 500, 22-28. Sure, they're still only 4 back in that weak division, 4 back in the wild card, but I don't know. Are the Cubs going to be able to get themselves together in time? Not quite sure. The Giants, they're actually having a pretty decent season at 27-25. They're in the wild card hunt as of right now, but it's a tough division. You got to imagine the Padres are going to heat up at some point. Will they heat up at some point? I'm not quite sure, honestly. I would imagine, though, that the Padres are going to get themselves together and they will eventually make the playoffs. That team is just too talented. They're definitely more talented than the San Francisco Giants, but I don't know. Hey, talent doesn't mean everything. I don't know. But in my opinion, I would imagine the Giants are going to fade out of it eventually. So maybe Jock Peterson could be up for grabs. I'm going to talk about a couple other Giants here in just a second. But as for Bellinger and Peterson, you're looking at over $11 million worth of value right now for Cody Bellinger. He does have a mutual option next year with the Cubs. Usually you don't see those exercised. I don't know, maybe Bellinger would want to stick around with the Cubs. He's doing really well for them this year. I mean, look at the numbers for Bellinger, man. Hitting .271, .337 on base, .493 slugging. This guy, he's not back to those 2019 numbers, but he's definitely gotten himself back on track. As for Peterson, he is hurt right now, has an injury with the hand, but having himself a pretty decent season. Low batting average, we've seen that before with Jock Peterson, but .351 on base, .494 slugging, .127 WRC plus. This guy has tons of playoff experience, so I think a team would love to have him on their roster. But as for his trade value, it is in the negatives because he is owed quite a bit of money, but he will be a free agent after the season, so maybe teams would be willing to take on that money. Now, if we go take a look at some teams that could possibly use some lefty bats. Now, the few teams that really jump off the page, hey, maybe the Padres would want to deepen their lineup just a little bit more, even though they got all these guys in their lineup that are just so good. Maybe they want to add another bat. Maybe, could you imagine the Braves maybe bringing back Jock Peterson? That'd be hilarious, but maybe they would be interested in bringing in Bellinger. Not quite sure, but we got a couple of New York teams here. We got the Yankees at number 26 overall with their lefty bats against right-handed pitching, so maybe they would want to upgrade this lineup a little bit more. As of right now, you got IKF out in left field. You got Willie Calhoun at DH. You will get Stanton back eventually. I mean, my goodness, he's like he's a glass house. I mean, let's see if he can get himself healthy. I would think he would, but Either way, even if you do get Stanton back and he goes and plays some outfield or DHs, you're still going to, I think, need another bat in this lineup. It feels like they could use it. So maybe the Yankees could be an option for one of these guys. And then you got a team like the Mets. Even though the Mets are 9th with their lefty bats against right-handed pitching, it does feel like they could use another bat. And one guy that they have in the outfield is Mark Canha, who's not having a great season overall. So maybe they want to make an upgrade with a Cody Bellinger, with a Jock Peterson. It'll be really interesting, but I think these are two guys to definitely keep an eye on at the trade deadline. I mentioned a couple more guys with the San Francisco Giants. Why not Alex Cobb and Alex Wood? These guys could be some rentals for some teams that really do need some pitching. If we go take a look here at the starting pitching leaderboards when it comes to Fangraphs, I mean, there's teams always needing some starting pitching, but there have been some teams that their starting pitching has either been dismantled because of injuries or just not being effective. Now, my Red Sox could absolutely use some starting pitching. I could see Chaim Bloom being interested in a guy like an Alex Cobb. I think that could be a pretty decent fit. The Mets, they've had injuries, so maybe they could be interested in maybe bringing in Alex Cobb or an Alex Wood. You know, the Cardinals, I mentioned earlier, could use some starting pitching. I could see the Cardinals doing something like that. Remember a couple of years ago, bringing in, John Lester. So I think it's very possible the Cardinals could do something. Then we got some other teams, where they're doing better with starting pitching, but maybe they want to just, beef it up a little bit more, add some guys to the stretch run. The Dodgers have had a lot of injuries to their rotation, so maybe they would be interested. The Braves, maybe they would want to bring in someone like an Alex Cobb or Alex Wood, because who knows when they're going to be getting Max Fried back. I could imagine maybe them making a deal. Who knows? Maybe if Jacob deGrom ends up having some more problems, maybe the Rangers could be interested in something like that instead of breaking the bank for a guy like, Dylan Cease or Shane Bieber. So there are teams that will definitely need some starting pitching. I think, like I said, I think the Giants will eventually fade. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think a guy like Alex Cobb, who will be, he has a club option for next year. So maybe that could make it even more enticing for a team to trade for him. He's not really going to break the bank when it comes to his salary, but Alex Wood will be a free agent after this year. So, hey, some guys that could be some rentals down the stretch. Cobb, again, has the club option. Maybe these guys could be pretty desirable for a team in need of starting pitching. Speaking of starting pitching, let's go back to the White Sox. Let's talk about Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito. Like I mentioned before, the White Sox, I still think, have a chance in this Central Division because it is so weak. But who knows? Maybe that first month that we saw with the White Sox really is what they are. Again, like I mentioned earlier, they are 14-10 in May as of right now. So we'll see how they finish the rest of the month. But maybe they do just end up completely fading out of it. And these two guys would definitely be available. Lance Lynn, he does have a club option for 24, but I would imagine the White Sox, 36 years old, maybe they want to just, try and get some prospects back. They do need prospects for that farm system. It's one of the worst farm systems in all of Major League Baseball. They really could use a boost there. So Lance Lynn, a team in need of starting pitching, I think would love to have him. Sure, he's not having his best season overall. He has been pitching better as of late. 5.83 ERA overall, 4.71 FIP, but the xFIP does look pretty good at a 3.89. I think Lance Lynn will end up being a decent pitcher for the rest of the year. He's a veteran guy I think a team would like to add for their rotation. Now, the guy that I think is more desirable is Lucas Giolito because he is having a better season, way better than he was doing last year, a 3.98 ERA, 4.20 FIP. The xFIP is a little higher at 4.40, but solid strikeout to walk ratio, 9 strikeouts per 9, just under 3 walks per 9. The home runs just over 1 per 9, but Lucas Giolito I think would be a solid add. He will be a rental. He will be a free agent after this year, but again, it is going to come down to where will the White Sox be. I would imagine they would like to compete with the players that they have. It's a talented team. They're just underperforming so badly. We'll just have to see where they are. I'm guessing they're really going to, they're going to make a decision by the end of June. They're going to see where they're at. If they're, within a few games of the division, no, I don't think these guys will be on the market just because of how weak the division is. But if they do fall out of it, I think guys like Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito would be solid additions for teams that are in playoff contention. And if the White Sox do fall out of it, I do think Liam Hendriks could be available. An amazing story coming back from cancer. He's on a rehab assignment as of right now. I'm so happy for the guy. I can't wait to see him back in the major leagues. But we all know Liam Hendriks is a competitor, and if the White Sox do fall out of it, I would think he would be more than welcome to going to a team in playoff contention trying to win a World Series. This guy, if healthy, on top of his game, he is just one of the best relievers in all of Major League Baseball. I mean, look at the numbers that he put up last year. Over the 58 games, he had a 2.81 ERA, a 2.68 FIP, tons of strikeouts, doesn't walk a whole lot of guys. He would be a solid addition for any bullpen out there looking to win a World Series. But again, it really is going to come down to where will the White Sox be come July. But out of all these guys, I think the most slam dunk candidate to get traded is Aroldis Chapman. He's on a one-year deal with the Kansas City Royals. The Royals are doing nothing this year, and Aroldis Chapman is having himself a really good season after, just being, in my opinion, kind of a bust with the Yankees, especially in the last couple of years. He was so bad last year with the Yankees. But so far, 20 games, 18 and 2/3 innings pitched, a 2.89 ERA, a 1.90 FIP. His velocity is back up to what it used to be, striking out a ton of guys. His strikeouts are up almost 5 strikeouts per 9 from last year. He's still walking a lot of guys, so that is a bit of concern, but the numbers are looking really good. The ERA, the FIP, the xFIP are still looking pretty good. And again, the velocity. This guy, to me, I think is absolutely going to get traded. If we go take a look at some teams that could use some relief pitching. Now, the one team that jumps off the page to me are the New York Mets, losing Edwin Diaz in the World Baseball Classic. But a team like the Rays, they have been really having a lot of problems with their bullpen lately. I think that could be a team possibly that could be in the mix for an Aroldis Chapman. You got other teams like the Diamondbacks, I think could use another guy in the bullpen. I think that'd be a pretty solid addition. The Rangers could be a really good addition. They're having a great season. The Blue Jays, who knows? Maybe even my Red Sox want to beef up that bullpen even more. And then you got teams that have good bullpens this year. I don't think he's going back to the Yankees, but who knows? Maybe a team like the Braves with already a really good bullpen. Maybe they want to make it just even that much better. The Cardinals, maybe they just want to add to this team, maybe add him. There's a ton of teams that could be, a possibility for him. Who knows? Maybe even the Dodgers. That could be interesting. But I think Chapman, out of all of these guys that I've mentioned, at least as of right now, I mean, this, I'm doing this video on May 27th. So a month from now, many of these guys that I've mentioned could become clear-cut trade candidates. But right now, Aroldis Chapman is a clear-cut trade candidate. I think it's going to be really fun to see where he ends up going, especially if he keeps having the season that he's having. But those are my thoughts. Tell me your thoughts down below in the comments. What do you think of the guys that I've mentioned? Am I missing any? I know I'm probably missing any. My potato brain does that to me. But I would love to know what you think down below in the comments. Or hit the like for this video. Subscribe if you are new. So that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.